Episode 24, the finale of Mushoku Tensei, Jobless Reincarnation, second season. What an emotional episode. I have to say it, Norn's VA absolutely nailed it. She absolutely nailed it. She got me crying the entire time, but on top of that, yes, like the whole graveyard scene, Lilia being embraced by Aisha, what else? Zenith picking up the armor. What other segments of this segment did I cry about? It just, I can't even think right now. That's how bad this is. What an absolutely incredible finale. I think this is by far the best portrayed scenes that I think the adaptation has done so far. I mean, yes, the whole fight with Paul and the Hydra and losing Paul, all that stuff was incredibly emotional, but I think for adaptation-wise and the performances themselves, the finale takes the cake. I think they did an incredible job with this segment. Granted, they didn't have like too much to cover, and they only really took out a little bit of fluff here and there, which we'll get into. By the way, this is my impression/skip content video for the finale. Yeah, just great overall. I absolutely loved it. And yes, technically at the very end, we get the official announcement for the third season. Like I tell everybody before, there's nothing saying they have to adapt everything. So whenever there is an actual announcement, it is a good thing. We finally get to see it on the screen. Yes, we get a couple little excerpts, some teases about what's to come, which is going to be absolutely insane. And I hope you guys will join me on this channel for the actual journey through that. And as I'll continue to skip content videos for it then, but yes, it's a great time to be a Mushoku Tensei fan. Let's just say that. I do like the fact that right after this episode aired, Rifujin, who I think does very well in not spoiling things for the anime fans, immediately tweets out, I can finally advertise Roxy Gets Serious. Because yes, there's technically like spoilers for this volume in the beginning of that. So you have to keep that in mind going into that. So yeah, it's some good stuff, and I can't wait to actually read that manga series because I, of course, adore Roxy. But I will say that there's probably some Dillo fans out there that are going to be upset. Some light novel readers that are Dillo fans are going to be upset that, yes, technically they did disinclude Dillo in the family meeting, which I think is just horrible. It's absolutely horrible. I think that's like the biggest change they actually made in this episode. I think the other cool thing that I actually did like they changed in this episode was the afterwards of Sylphie accepting Roxy. That whole scene with them sparring outside is completely anime original, but the dialogue in that scene is technically what they talk about right after that whole segment. So it's a nice little transition to kind of lighten up the mood a little bit by having Norn getting out of frustration sparring with him. But it was a really good little addition there, even though they kind of skipped some stuff there. But again, I'll get into all that stuff. So with that said, let's just get into it. My skip content impressions of the finale of Mushoku Tensei Season 2. The opening segment of the episode, I think, kind of scared me a little bit because I wasn't sure if they were actually going to get into what was making Rudeus panic. But yes, this is all about regrets. He's suddenly realizing, wait, the whole thing with Paul, that's different. That's grief. That's not actually regrets. But there is some other tidbits here, and especially around Lilia and the acceptance of Roxy and stuff. Drawing close to the Magic City of Shiraya, Rudeus had spoken to Lilia about Roxy. Her usual poker face in place, she merely accepted it with a very well. It didn't sound like she judged him for it, probably being in the same position as Roxy before. Wait, that wasn't it. It's because the notion of being with one person only existed in Millis. Getting her understanding and making his promise with Roxy, a weight was off his shoulders. All that was left was to explain it to Sylphie, bow his head before her, and plead for Roxy's inclusion in their family. He also had the weight of explaining Paul and Zenith's situation to his sisters. But they would have to accept it, just as he did. He was certain that Norn would react in anger and blame him, but he was still going to do it. Not run away. No regrets. That's when he spoke out loud. Regrets? Just then, anxiety reared its ugly head. Those were the man god's words. He said that he would regret something. Paul's death? Zenith becoming a husk? Losing his left hand? He'd lost a lot. Yet, strangely, he didn't feel regret. He could thank Roxy for that. Yes, a part of him thought, only if he was stronger, wielded a sword better, strong enough to defeat that Hydra. But another part of him felt it was impossible either way. His aptitude for battle wasn't the best. He couldn't wrap himself in a battle aura, nor did he know how to try. It was required to advance as a swordsman. Even with better skill in magic, it would be useless. There might have been some other way, but the past was the past. I think the anime nailed Norn's frustration, because you could totally see in her that she's angry, but then she immediately sees his arm and goes, if you couldn't have done it, then... Basically right there, the unspoken thing that she's saying there, I believe, is then me being there wouldn't have made a difference. If you couldn't have done it, it's not like I could have done better. But again, right here, he's starting to question Paul's death, Zenith becoming a husk, losing his arm. Yeah, I didn't feel regret about those things. And he said regret specifically. Yes, he's talking about, like usual, I could have done this and this and this, which, by the way, for the anime onlys, yes, he's tried several times to try to produce a battle aura. When Bodyguardi was still around at the university, he would train on every morning, and Bodyguardi would come and help him train, and Bodyguardi was trying to help him learn how to do the battle aura, but he didn't really understand why he wanted a battle aura, because he's like, your mana pool's massive, I don't see why you would need it, but still, he tried to teach Rudeus how to do it, and Rudeus just couldn't figure it out. The idea of the battle aura was to, like, wrap your body with your mana and then, like, use it almost like a suit of armor, like a boosting suit. That was why Rudeus had no regrets. Paul's death had allowed him to reflect on his own past. He had caused trouble and worried people, but ultimately, there was good that came out of it. What he felt wasn't regret, but sadness. Just sadness. Sadness was all he carried with him from the Beggaret continent. But he was also anxious. Perhaps the thing that he was to regret has yet to come. Maybe something happened to his sisters he left behind. Remembering what he said, he mentioned stuff about Lilia and Priscilla. Did that mean something happened to one of them? Was he supposed to enlist them to help with something there? Or did something happen to his pregnant wife? Those are the only things that might leave him with regrets. Despite his apprehension, he couldn't move any faster. Weather and snow was picking up, causing Zenith to struggle. He made a chair of earth magic and hoisted her on his back. The armadillo was half frozen. He wondered if he should have left him behind. Rudeus decided to give it a name, so it didn't die without one. Do your best, Dillo. It took them 10 days versus the 5 it took them to head out. It wasn't his longest adventure thus far, but somehow it felt like the longest. Arriving at the magic city of Shierra, Rudeus immediately headed to his house. He felt his pacing quicken. Geese called out to him as he ran, but Rudeus ignored him and hurried forward. At some point, Rudeus broke into a sprint, leaving everyone behind. Those he passed looked on with confusion. Rudeus stumbled, completely off balance, perhaps due to the lack of his hand, impeding his ability to run smoothly. Just as he was about to fall, someone caught him and held him upright. It was Elinalise. What is all this hurry for? She asked. It's just, what is it? You've been panicking for a bit now. Did something happen? Oh, no, I just have a feeling that Sylphie's in trouble. In trouble? Based on what? Nothing, really. He brushed her off and broke into a hurried walk. He wanted to relieve his anxiety as quickly as possible. If things were as they should be, Sylphie's stomach would be heavy with a baby. Or maybe she already gave birth. It would be premature. Anything but that. Anything else. He just didn't want to have any more bad things happen. Arriving at his house, it was almost the same. Just an increase of potted plants. A production of Aisha's hobby, he assumed. The place looked more beautiful than ever. He tried to open the door with his key, but it wouldn't turn. Reaching for the knocker, he felt the coal on his hand, but banged several times anyhow. Are you sure it isn't open already? He tried it, and it came open. Too careless, he thought, as he stepped in. Oh, big brother, Aisha yelled out. Yeah, that was kind of funny when they got to this part and Rudeus kind of rushes in there and he starts running to every single room and he's yelling loudly like, Aisha, Sylphie. He's like yelling for everybody, and then Aisha comes out the door and is like, huh? Oh, big brother. It's like, at first I thought, like, is it going to be like a fake out for light novel fans and have him like wake up back at when they're traveling and he's like, oh crap, it was just a dream. But it's like, yeah, why the long segment and then Aisha be like, huh? What? You're actually here? It's like she can't hear him. It's fine though. It was fine. It did well in kind of showing that desperation. But yeah, everything right here is pretty much the same. Aisha panicking about the fact that he lost his hand. Rudeus asking them about everything. Like, is this person sick? Is everything fine? Is everybody fine? Okay, yeah, is everybody fine? Okay, thank God. I'm good. Now, this here we'll get a little bit of segment that's kind of skipped because they do have a little brief moment here where everybody's kind of greeting Sylphie and Aisha and getting welcomed in the home. Everything went in a frenzy after returning home. Aisha fetched Norn from school. Roxy left to get Geese and the others, maybe out of consideration or feeling too awkward. Elinalise seemed anxious to see Cliff, but resisted temptation. She's like, yeah, I need to go see him right now, but I'll be with the family meeting for right now. Rudeus passed the time asking Sylphie what happened since he left. He was sure that she wanted to know about how the adventure had gone, but she didn't complain. Her pregnancy was moving along smoothly, and her child would be born on time. The others were doing well, and Nanahoshi resolved some incident at the school a few days ago. Something in her must have changed to help people of this world. Yeah, she's changing. She used to like basically stay shut in. She didn't want to, her whole thing is that she didn't want to, she felt this world was fake. And so she didn't really want to get to know anybody. Norn and Aisha hadn't gotten sick or injured, both doing well. Aisha's gardening had been taking off and was even growing plants in her room. Norn was gradually becoming an idol-like figure in the school, having spawned something akin to a fan club. Of course, she's cute. Norn is too cute. It made sense given how cute she was. Zenoba, Cliff, Lilia, and Priscilla popped in occasionally to check on them. Ariel, here it is, finally. Ariel had apparently complained that he said nothing before leaving. Yeah, he pretty much just ditched her. And this is kind of something that he alluded to before. He was kind of going, man, there's somebody that I forgot to tell. Who did I forget to tell? I mean, the assumption is that, yes, Ariel would talk to Sylphie at some point. But yeah, it's implying right here that she found out probably from Sylphie and said, why the hell didn't he tell me? At any rate, everyone was okay. He'd have to inform them of his return when he had the time. Sadly, the only one that remained unaccounted for was Bodigatti. Yeah, I was surprised they showed him at the end of the episode. That wasn't in the novel. And I'm kind of mad because even I didn't know about that. Unless it's just an anime original just for some reason showing the two of them. But it sort of implies a lot. So I'm kind of bummed that I seen that. Bodigatti was immortal, so Rudeus doubted that anything would happen to him. Sylphie was adorable, putting her finger on her chin as she recalled the last 6 months. Wrapping things up, she inquired on what happened with his journey. He promised that he would tell her once everyone was there. Just then, Roxy returned with everyone else. Geese spoke up. Oh, you must be the boss's wife. Heh, you sure are cute. Boss, you're a lucky one. That's my granddaughter, Elinalise informed him. Yep, and if not for her slutty granny, she'd be perfect. Excuse me? Ignoring them, the rest of the party greeted Sylphie. Roxy spoke up first. A pleasure. I'm Roxy, Magurdia. Roxy, Sylphie replied. As in the master that Rudy is always boasting about? Yes, that one. Although I'm not special enough to warrant such boasting. Well, I'm pleased to meet you. I've heard so much about you from Rudeus. I'm Sylphiette. It's an honor. Yes, for me as well. Roxy was obviously seemingly awkward, probably due to their conversation about joining the family. It's been a while, Lilia spoke up. Mistress Sylphiette. Yes, it has been, Miss Lilia. Sylphie seemed delighted, lips threatening to break into a smile, but it turned bitter quickly. There's no need for the title. Could you just call me Sylphie, as you did long ago? No. She shook her head. I cannot treat you like I did before. Not now that you've wed Lord Rudeus. Oh, all right. Sylphie looked abashed. Lilia taught her everything about housework. In a way, Lilia was a master to Sylphie, as Roxy was to Rudeus. Of course, she respected Lilia. That's when Sylphie turned to Zenith. It's been a while. Miss Zenith? Miss Zenith? Zenith just stared blankly. Sylphie looked to Rudeus, troubled. Like she was worried Zenith wasn't too pleased about their marriage. That's totally a Rudeus in his mind thing. Rudeus spoke up. Sylphie, I'll explain everything about my mother and father once Norn gets here. Oh yes, I don't see Mr. Paul here. Glancing round, Sylphie didn't take long to infer what happened. The room fell silent, as they waited for Norn and Aisha. After a bit, they returned, both breathless from the run. Big brother, welcome back from your long journey. Seeing his hand, she panicked. Is your hand okay? It's fine. It's inconvenient, but it doesn't hurt. Compared to what else they would discuss, it was hardly noteworthy. Oh, okay. She muttered in confusion, scanning the room as she took her seat, obviously unable to find what she was looking for. Aisha offered to serve some tea, which made sense, as it would be a long conversation. After she denied Sylphie some offer to help, she went to work, readying the tea, gathering everyone's luggage, hanging coats, and replacing wet shoes with slippers. Lilia watched in silence, not raising a finger. It was a rare sight. Letting her daughter handle it. Lilia spoke up. Aisha? Yes, what is it, mother? She replied. It seems you've been attending your duties properly, and not causing trouble for your brother. Yes, Aisha nodded. You may be related to Lord Rudeus by blood, but it was he who saved your life. Keep that in mind as you continue to carry out your duties as a maid. Yes, mother. She sounded formal, like Lilia. It didn't feel right, hearing a child talk like that. This was their first time seeing each other in a while. It felt like they should be warmer to each other, but perhaps Lilia was just restraining herself. It was going to be a painful conversation after all. Yeah, that was the thing that I kind of noticed really quickly. It was like, okay, if you're seeing each other for the first time in a long time, why don't you be a little bit more cozy? I like that Norn actually catches that. You don't have to hold yourself back. And I think, and again, it goes to the whole conversation there, is they're dealing with loss, and they don't want to celebrate at the same time. That's why Norn has to say, go, Aisha. Don't worry about us. You can celebrate this one thing. I'm already getting emotional. Rudeus then spoke up. Since everyone's gathered, why don't we start? His heart was heavy, but it was his duty since Paul was no longer there. That's when Norn asked, but father's not here yet. Would she be angry with him? He told Norn that he would handle everything. She'd probably blame him. It was fine if she did. He was the one that failed to grant her wish. Our father, Paul Greyrat, is dead. Norn's eyes went wide, and her fists curled tight. Sylphie's head lowered, with a look of heartbreak. This is what he left behind. He placed the belongings and his remains on the table. But you went. Why did he die? Norn yelled. I'm sorry. I wasn't strong enough. But you're... She stepped close in fury, probably to grab his collar. But her fury suddenly lost steam. She looked to his lost hand, the belongings, and then his face. Tears welled up in her eyes. Covering his wrist, he continued, I'll explain in more detail. She sniffled, then muttered, an okay. Aisha grabbed her shoulder. I love they showed Aisha embracing her from behind. Like I said before, this whole scene was so beautifully portrayed. I mean, I can make some nitpicks about like some still frames being a little off, but the emotions there, the moods there, the music, the music killed me. But additionally, like I said, Norn's VA, her Seiyu absolutely just the choke in the voice, the screaming, everything like that. Oh, it hurts so bad. Rudeus summarized everything that happened. He slowly ran through it, with Geese supplying additional information now and then. So that means you weren't able to save Mother or Father. That's right. Surprisingly, she didn't explode in his response. She bit her lip and stared at his missing hand. Did you do everything you could? Yeah, I gave it my all. If you tried that hard and still failed, then it wouldn't have mattered if... Her voice was calm, but trailed off, tears filling her eyes. I'm sure it wouldn't have mattered. Father is gone. Tears were streaming down her face as she began to sob. She was crying loudly, her voice pierced through his heart. Again, I do honestly think that, and again, this is a lot to do with the skip chapter. So by the way, I have a skip content video. It's called Norn in the Miller's Church. That's a segment right after Rudeus left for the bigger continent, where she goes to the Miller's Church and meets Cliff. And in that whole segment, what it is about is that she hates the fact that she's weak and she can't help. And she also, is the key thing here, she feels like she's going to be at fault if something happens to Rudeus. She pushed him. And so if something happens to him, it's her fault. She felt like she was at fault if anything happened to Rudeus. So now she's kind of in this mixture of pain and sorrow for losing the pillar of her life, Paul. Paul is the pillar of her life. Ever since she was displaced, she has done nothing but been at Paul's side the entire journey in this suffering, trying to find his family. He was everything to her. He was her knight in shining armor, her dad. She just became so impressioned with him. So she's grieving here. But at the same time, she sees Rudeus and he's injured. So obviously, if he lost his arm, that means he obviously fought really hard. If he came back and he lost nothing, then that would have been a sign that, yeah, I mean, she kind of mentions it later on. If he came back and he didn't lose something, then yeah, he probably didn't try hard enough. But that shows at least that he tried really hard. And again, if he couldn't have done it, if the great Rudeus Grey Rat, the amazing Rudeus that has done so many incredible things, if he can't do it, what was I going to do? Then nobody would have been able to help him. Everyone wore grave expressions as Norn's body shook as she sobbed. She cried all the tears the rest of them hadn't. They just listened as she did so. After some time, she turned to Rudeus, eyes red, but filled with determination, asking if she can have the sword. This whole scene. But before I get to that, yeah, I do like the note that she cried all the tears the rest of them hadn't. Everybody else couldn't. They didn't have time to. And yes, Rudeus technically was crying at the end, way back here in Beggar Continent. But the idea here is that most everybody is trying to be tough. They're trying to be strong. They're trying to push through it. Like Lilia, this entire time I'm going, when is she going to break? Because she's obviously got to be destroyed. She lost her husband, the man that she loved. And she also lost Zenith. It's pretty much her wife. We always make the argument that it's the sister wives. There's no actual Paul. It's just these two, their wives. But yes, Rudeus accepted that she'd have the sword. And that's the part that really, really broke me. And yes, it kind of notes it in the anime, just so you guys don't miss it. Yes, Rudeus replies to taking the sword. You should take it, just don't use it recklessly. Don't mistake having a sword as a sign that you've suddenly gotten stronger. Paul had said the same thing to him, giving him a sword at the age of 5. She hugged it close to her chest. She was strong. Most her age would hole up in their room and cry. Yet she was facing a loss head on. Unlike Rudeus, who couldn't crawl back on his feet without Roxy. They split the mementos amongst the family. Aisha chose a short sword. Rudeus, his armor, remains will be buried in a proper grave. That was the plan before Zenith drifted forward and took his armor into her hands. Mother? She didn't respond. She just blankly stared ahead, like a husk. Yet she moved as if understanding what was going on here. Was it just coincident? This killed me when I read it. It kills me every time I read it. There's so much relatability here. It's the loss of father and the idea of losing one's mind and memories. Is so personal. Was it just coincidence? No, perhaps the core of who she was still remained. Rudeus was left with nothing, but he was satisfied with that. He received so much from Paul already. Yeah, it's kind of noting there that he was going to take the armor, but the moment that Zenith walked up there and took that, it's like, yes, have it. But yes, this is one of the things in the OP where if you're really looking, you can see a spoiler there. And yes, it is Zenith with Paul's gauntlets on her lap. that was in the OP, and I'm like, it's a really quick frame, but I'm like, I hope nobody catches on what that's implying there. Because yes, those are obviously Paul's gauntlets. I think I've seen them plenty of times before in the show. Well then, let's talk about Mother next. After explaining her empty state, Sylphie spoke up. She won't get any better? I don't know. Rudeus intended to have doctors and healers examine her, but he'd never heard of healing magic restoring lost memories. Yeah, they mentioned that at the bar scene that was skipped in the anime adaptation just before Roxy went in there to Rudeus. But yeah, in that scene, they mentioned the idea that, yeah, healing doesn't work on memories. It just, once some, they talk about like poisons and whatnot affecting you, and if anything damaging happens to the brain itself, it seems like there's no healing that can even work on it. They still didn't know the root cause of her issue, only that she was encased in a magically imbued crystal and lost her memories. It could be akin to oxygen deficiency. If there was damage to her brain, the medical technology of this world wouldn't be able to fix her. Sadly, it's pretty much the same case in our world. Even advanced tier magic hadn't done anything. Manga had cases of having the same level shock, but he couldn't test that on Zenith. He wasn't sure she'd be happy if they cured her. Paul died saving her. She'd surely blame herself. But no, that wasn't right. They should work to restore her memories. He informed everyone Zenith would need treatment and care, that they planned on having her live in the house with them. Rudeus did wonder if he would have taken care of his previous parents, if they had become bedridden. Yeah, I think, yeah, now you would, but back then, no. I don't think the old world Rudeus would have done that. While Lilia said that she planned on getting a separate place, as to not be a burden on him, he shot the idea down quickly. Good boy. He's so grown. Even if she had the funds to live on over a decade in this town, Rudeus wouldn't allow it. Paul wouldn't allow it. It was his duty as her remaining family. While Lilia would be entrusted to her care, he wanted everyone to lend a hand. Sylphie agreed to help. No one seemed to disagree. Not that he intended to let them. Paul told him to save Zenith, even if it killed him. Even now, he didn't truly know what that meant. But now that he was gone, Rudeus had to protect her. It's such a massive growing point. Such a massive growing point for him. I mean, again, I think this episode was so well portrayed that you technically get that sense. I have a child now, especially towards the end there. I have a child now. I have to grow up. It's time for me to get better. He is so maturing. This is like volume 12 is smack across the face for Rudeus. Wake the hell up and appreciate what's around you. Stop messing around. Whereas it's in contrast to before this, it's literally like, oh, Sylphie saved me. I love her. No one wanted to go away. Better marry her. And it goes right into, man, I can't wait to have a baby. I need a trophy. And I always pointed that out. I really do feel like, and it seems like it's pretty obvious, the novel portrays Rudeus having a child with Sylphie as, I want a prize, a medal that says that I had a baby. Like, it doesn't really feel like he's like, I want to have a child and have a legacy. I don't want to have a child to raise a child with her. It's literally, I want a symbol that I had a child with her. And it's so great to see that shift to now family. Family's important to him. And then again, right there, the moment that he has a child, he starts bawling his eyes out. It's no longer, this is a trophy to put on a wall. This is my daughter. That's the big difference there. But yeah, that's when Aisha speaks up about Lilia living with them. Rudeus wondered if Aisha seen Lilia as a thorn in her side, now living at the house. She was strict with her growing up. He got a sense that Aisha was happy living away from her mother. He'd have to correct her if she expressed displeasure. It didn't feel appropriate. But here's like specifically, I think in the anime they didn't really get specific with this, but yes, Lilia said we can discuss the work later on. I intend to make the mistress's care my primary focus, leaving the majority of the housework to you, Aisha. So she's basically saying, I'm going to be focusing on Zenith. And yes, I might do some other stuff, but that's your job. Her goal there, her purpose there is to tend to Zenith. So it's not like she's actually stepping in on Aisha's game, though you can say that Aisha's true game is to get Rudeus in bed, and Lilia might get in the way of that. Which is, yes, complete fallacy, because, yes, Lilia has been grooming Aisha for the sole sake of getting with Rudeus. Aisha seemed gloomy, and her voice was stiff. It didn't seem like she was comfortable with having her mother present. Norn noticed this and put her hand on her shoulder, whispering, "You don't have to hold back on our account, okay?" Aisha looked at Norn, then to Lilia, then to Rudeus. He wasn't sure what she was looking to him for approval, or what to approve, but he nodded nonetheless. Yeah, I like that fact that, again, Norn knows what Aisha wants to do. And this is great because, again, Norn just got done bawling her eyes out over the loss of her father. She is devastated, but yet she can see that Aisha wants to go be with her mother. And so she nudges her. And Rudeus is over here like, is she mad that she's going to be with Lilia in the house? And then, okay, yeah, whatever you want, nod. He doesn't even know what she's doing. It says it's funny that the anime doesn't even imply that. He just nods at her like he knows what's going on. He doesn't know what's going on. But yeah, Aisha just jumped right into her arms and started bawling her eyes out. Oh, it's so hurt. It's so hurt. It all suddenly made sense to Rudeus. She was conflicted. Lilia was her mother. He was sure that she prayed for Paul and Zenith's well-being too, but it was Lilia's safety that she prayed for above all others. Now, Lilia was home safe. The situation was just too grim for her to express her joy. Forgive me for doubting you, Aisha. Yeah, again, it's like Rudeus has a habit of always assuming the worst, and that's obviously comes from his previous life and even the harsh moments that he's had in this world. He always assumes the worst, and that often frustrates me, especially as I'm reading the series. I'm like, why do you doubt people so much? I know why, but still. After Geese gave a financial report, they went to depart to find an inn. Rudeus tried to stop them, but Geese shot back that he didn't want to get in the way of their family. Talhand, Vierra, and Shierra agreed and grabbed their luggage. Now, this is a really great scene, because I think that's something that I've said several times before, I think in the skip content videos, but it's like, always having to remind yourself how much these people went through for Paul. Now, yes, Paul saved Vierra and Shierra. That's why they were so devoted to him. They wanted to pay him back, and they wanted to help him because he was such a great guy. But people like Talhand, Elinalise, Geese, these are people that put down their lives for so many years just to help Paul with finding his family. It's absolutely huge to think about that. Rudeus called out, "Everyone, thank you for your assistance that you provided my father this whole time." Vierra and Shierra bowed their heads deeply. They were with Paul since Milshin. Rudeus hadn't spoken to them much, but they supported him in a myriad of ways. The heroes behind the scenes. No, we should be the ones apologizing for not being more helpful. We'd appreciate it if you let us know where the captain's grave is once you finished. Their replies were short. Rudeus wondered what Paul had been to them, following him to Beggaret Continent even after the rescue squad disbanded. Perhaps they had special feelings for him. Even if they loved him, it was over now. It was all over now. "What do you intend to do?" he asked them. "Once winter is over, we'll return to the Ostra Kingdom. There are people from the search and rescue squad to whom we are indebted." "I see. Well, take care." "You as well, Lord Rudeus. I know you'll have a lot on your shoulders from here on out, but take care of yourself." Bowing again, Vierra and Shierra left. Rudeus remembered something about Zenith's family helping finance Paul's activities. Zenith wasn't exactly safe and sound, but he would inform them that she had been found. He decided he'd pin them a letter. That's when Geese slapped him on the back. Yes, he thanked them all for their help. Asking Geese and Talhand what their plans were going forward, Geese said that they planned to head to Ostra. They wanted to exchange their currency and sell the magic items they had got. The items were special. One was a short sword that could be used in the place of a match. Rudeus tossed his into the basement storage in case he needed money. The magic stones were a different matter. Rudeus wanted to research them once he had some time. If he faced a similar opponent in the future, he didn't want a repeat of the labyrinth. He didn't want to be powerless. Again, kind of taking the aspect of failure and turning it into some sort of prevention the next time, which I really do respect. Geeson spoke up. "If you want, we can take all the items that you got and sell them in Ostra. You'll get a lot more bang for your buck there, you know." "And let me guess," Rudeus replied. "On the way back here, you'll gamble it all away and make a run for it." Hey, no way. I wouldn't put my hands on your money, boss." His shifting eyes said otherwise, but Rudeus did owe him an enormous debt. They would have never made it through the labyrinth without him. Yeah, that is a crucial thing there. With his knowledge about, using burning the roots in order to scare away the monsters, and his ability to get through the labyrinth without stepping on traps, like his ability to see the traps and detect them and navigate them perfectly through that labyrinth is huge. Rudeus told him that he was kidding, but Geese replied, "Well, I did plan to gamble at some of it." And after that, "Going to continue to be an adventurer." Talhand followed up, "Those are the only skills we got." "Well, we'll be here until spring," Geese said, "so come drink with us when you got time. You said you introduced me to a nice female monkey, yeah?" Goliath. I guess since you got a wife and a kid on the way, you probably don't frequent those kind of places." Goliath's not in those places. It was true. This wasn't the last time they see each other just yet. Still, Geese was the type to just up and leave on his next adventure without a word, so Rudeus wanted to say his farewells while he could. After Talhand and Geese parted ways, Rudeus noted that Elinalise was talking to Sylphie the whole time. Maybe it was about Roxy. He told her it was his duty, but being the busybody that she was, she may have put in a few words for him. Still, he was anxious about having that conversation. So, he was grateful for her consideration. Which kind of implies in the anime, hey, yeah, he really loves you. But no, I do like her parting words with Rudeus. I really do love that. "Miss Elinalise, you were really there for me," Rudeus said. She had a bitter look on her face. "I'm sorry about Paul." No, that was Rudeus thought, my mistake, my carelessness. He wanted to say that, but she cut him off. It was my duty in the party to make sure things like that didn't happen. Paul died because of my shortcomings. There was no way that was true, Rudeus thought. They fought for their lives. None of them could have known what was waiting for them. Dodging the Hydra's ultimate attack and being a single head from victory. There was only 2 people to blame her. Elinalise and Paul. Rudeus said, I can't blame you or anyone else. Which Elinalise replied, then don't blame yourself either. I like that. No, I can't blame you. Everybody did great. You all did great. Then don't blame yourself. If nobody can be blamed, then don't blame yourself. I love it. But yeah, after Elinalise leaves, that's when Rudeus lets out a sigh. At last, the displacement incident was over. At least for Rudeus. All his missing family had been found, even if there was still victims out there, still missing. But he had no obligations to search for them. It was over. A long, frustrating, bitter journey. Now life could move on to the next stage. No looking back. He had to live on and look ahead. There was still so much that he wanted to do in this world. So much that he wanted to do. So let's look to the future. Yeah, it's a very important thing to note there. The displacement incident, which for the anime only, which is like episode 4 or something like that, finally, it's over. The aftermath of what happened way back there, turning point 1, is finally wrapped up. It's pretty crazy if you think about it. But yes, this is when we get the meeting with the wives. The meeting with the wives. 5 people remained in Rudeus' living area. Sylphie, Norn, Aisha, Roxy, and Rudeus. Dillo was sprawled out in front of the fireplace with a look of bliss. Anime adaptation, studio bind, director. Dillo was in the room. Dillo was in the damn room. Lilia had taken Zenith to a bath after asking if it was alright. He really wanted to get through this discussion without her aid. Norn had lingered, despite having a rough time and sniffling. With her attachment to Paul, she was taking this exceptionally hard. Everyone took their seats again. Roxy came to Rudeus' side. Seeing Sylphie's swollen belly made him hesitate. But he had to take responsibility. Roxy would be in a similar state soon. Again, for those that missed my last week's skip content, Elinalise pretty much gave him that last little bump by implying that Roxy might be pregnant. So Rudeus right here thinks that she's pregnant. If Sylphie refused him, and it was a lie, by the way. It was obviously, by Elinalise, it was a lie. If Sylphie refused him, bringing her into his family, he'd do whatever he could to support Roxy. Financially or otherwise. Again, I think this whole segment in the anime was so well done. I think the only thing that we really kind of missed with the adaptation, obviously, is a lot of these kind of inner dialogues that Rudeus is having during what is obviously Norn getting really mad. And I really do feel like this entire thing is Norn. She just got broke by the fact that her father's gone. She is absolutely broke right now. And I think a lot of that frustration and sadness and sorrow is feeling her frustration for Rudeus in doing this. And yes, she makes a good point. The entire time Rudeus is gone, she's there she's not really there the whole time. She's just kind of visiting now and then. But she's there every now and then seeing Sylphie, and Sylphie is there wondering if her husband's going to come home. Sitting there worried about the state that he's in, and to come to find out that he's been sleeping with somebody, yeah. Just like everybody was upset last week, that's Norn. She's mad. Norn is everybody that was so mad last week with last week's episode. Now, it was odd because I don't remember if the anime actually had Sylphie speak up in panic when Rudeus got on his hands and knees. But yeah, obviously, Norn is the one that gets mad. Rudeus got down on his knees on the cold ground, placing his head on the floor. Sylphie panicked. Huh? Wait, Rudy? I still love Sylphie, just as much as I did before. But it seems I may have gotten Roxy pregnant. I need to take responsibility for that. The more he spoke, the cheaper his words sounded. But they were his true feelings. Looking up at Sylphie, she had a troubled look on her face. Perhaps confusion. He couldn't blame her. He told her that he'd love her, swore that he would come back no matter what. Now he returned in shambles, minus a family member and a hand. She might have thought that she could rejoice over his safety. But here he was wanting to take another woman into his life. In her place, he would have wanted to lash out. As Norn protested about how Sylphie was constantly asking if Rudeus was okay, and saying that she missed Rudeus. In his mind, Rudeus could imagine it, her expression, and her loneliness. And that's where we get into the part where I was talking about where I think like a lot of this has to do with Norn's frustration about losing her father. And yes, the reason why she didn't speak out and attack him for not saving her father. She said, I figured I couldn't blame you for not being able to save father. If things were so tough that you even lost your left hand, then there was nothing anyone could do. So it seemed wrong to blame you for it. But now you're telling me that you had enough composure during all that to have sex with another woman, and now you want to make her your wife? No, I wasn't composed at all. I was depressed. That's why Roxy put her own feelings online to save me. Miss Sylphie could have done that same thing if she'd been there. Rudeus knew that was true, if Sylphie was there. She had cured his ED after all, but Roxy was the one who actually saved him. Even though she had feelings for him, even though she knew he had someone, she resolved to do it, knowing she'd be tossed aside afterwards. Rudeus then spoke up. Norn, you should understand how it feels. Locking yourself up in your room, feeling like you're so deep inside your hole, you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. How are you supposed to cast aside the person who saved you from that? I do know, she replied. I'm grateful for you helping me out with that. But this is a separate matter. Lord Millis would never permit someone to take a second wife. That's right. Norn was a follower of Millis. But no, he figured that wasn't the issue. Maybe it was just him. Maybe he was doing something wrong and trying to strong-arm his way into being in the right. That's when Norn turned her attention to Roxy. Besides, why that tiny girl? I'm actually an adult. Roxy returned her gaze with her usual poker face. She was taller than Norn, but barely so. In the face of Norn's hostile gaze, she remained unfazed and muttered, I may be small, but I'm an adult. Her voice trembled, an open door to her heart, but her words were such that they can be construed as impertinent. Infuriated, Norn shot back. If you're such an adult, don't you feel bad for barging into their relationship? Rudeus objected with a firm tone. Norn, that's going too far. I'm the one who said I wanted to bring her into our family. Roxy's done nothing wrong. She's the one that tried to back out of it. Norn kept her eyes on Roxy. Stay quiet. Besides, if she really did try to back out, then why is she still here, clinging to you, just taking advantage of your offer? He honestly thought about slapping her. There was several times while I was getting through this segment that I was like, at some point you have to say, hey, this is not your family. You need to chill. But again, I feel like this entire thing, and I really honestly feel like Sylphie kind of let her vent it, because everybody should know that right now Norn is just absolutely broken, and she's emotional, and she's venting it with this. But yes, I kind of feel for Rudeus right here, where when it comes to directing that at somebody besides himself, probably should have stepped in. Honestly, Rudeus thought about slapping her, but knew he didn't have the right to do such a thing. If he slapped her, he'd feel like he'd really become a complete scum. Roxy remained quiet, looking indifferent as usual. Her eyes turned to the floor, then finally lifted up, bowing to Norn. You're right. It was shameless of me. I apologize. Standing up straight, she drifted to the edge of the room, grabbed her luggage, placed her hat on her head, and moved towards the exit. Rudeus couldn't even stop her. He knew they faced resistance, knew not to underestimate how difficult it would be for everyone to accept this, but he thought that he could convince them. That was naive. Now here they were. Roxy had been lambasted for her part. She'd probably thought that she was walking on a bed of nails, and that things might be more painful if she stayed. No one would choose to stay with that possibility in mind. Even Rudeus felt he would run for the door, unable to withstand it. But Rudeus couldn't leave her with such a bitter taste. That wasn't how he wanted this to end. He wanted to repay her for everything that she had done. Not just bring her here to be dragged through the mud. He wanted to make her happy. Yet, he couldn't stop her. Couldn't hold her back. Maybe he couldn't make her happy. He had to think. She'd leave any second now. He had to at least stop her. Even if it meant slapping Norn. Even if it meant making Norn hate him. That's when Sylphie spoke up. It was cute. I like that whole segment, which is pretty much all this is pretty much word for word with Sylphie. Pretty much noting the fact that, yeah, you standing there, I knew that you were in love. If you said that you didn't have any other reasons, yeah, I wouldn't have believed you. She obviously seen that she was in love. But the key thing there is that I do really love, and this is again is for the last week outrage, which doesn't make it right. Honestly, again, for me personally, in that whole segment with Rudeus sleeping with Roxy, I wanted Rudeus to be faithful because he promised that. But still, it is a nice thing to kind of soften the blow here. It's obvious the fact that Sylphie accepts Roxy. Again, she said before that he can take multiple wives is fine. But right here, she's saying, if I was in the same place that you had been, I would have done the exact same thing. So the idea here is if Roxy was at home, pregnant, and Rudeus runs into Sylphie in the labyrinth and falls in love with him, and then he loses his father, and he's going to die, Sylphie's saying, I would have slept with him. I would have saved him too. We both have the same thought process here. We want to help Rudeus. But yeah, Sylphie does technically say that I honestly thought the one that he'd bring home was going to be Lilia, Priscilla, or Nanahoshi. Roxy said, I haven't heard those names, except for Miss Nanahoshi. They're his friends at school. They're all very sexy, with huge breasts. Except for Miss Nanahoshi. Rudeus protested inside that Nanahoshi wasn't exactly sexy. She's cute. But yes, after Sylphie welcomes her into the family, they shook hands, radiating a sort of solidarity. Rudeus was able to let out a sigh of relief, a reaction that slipped out the moment that he thought it would be okay. Lauren glanced at him, furrowing her brows. If Sylphie is accepting it, then I have nothing else to say. Apparently, she wasn't quite on board yet. She frowned slightly, glaring at them. Perhaps he had earned her contempt once again. Yeah, this is where it kind of cuts in the anime to outside where they're training, which again, like I said before, I think that was a really nice touch because it takes this whole scene, pulls it out of kind of the negativity that's going on in that scene. When Sylphie mentioned the fact that, yes, Rudy is not a follower of Millis, Norn went to protest, but Sylphie followed up. Mr. Paul had 2 wives as well, didn't he? True, he did. Would you say the same kind of thing to Miss Lilia then? Norn's eyes went wide, looking to Aisha, who was beside her. Aisha, being quiet the whole time, had a picture of composure. Yeah, right here I was kind of thinking, yeah, what Aisha is probably thinking right now is Roxy just opened the door. Aisha's like, Roxy just opened the door. I think there's a side where Aisha's like mad because Roxy beat her to it, but there's another side of it that, yes, finally, Rudeus keeps talking about how he's going to be completely 100% faithful to Sylphie. Roxy just opened that door. Time for me to get in there too. Oh, I'm sorry, Aisha, Norn said. It's fine. Really. I know that you often say things without thinking it through. Why do you have to put it like that? Look what just happened. That wasn't your place to speak. You keep going on about Miss Sylphie and her feelings. But really, you were just forcing your own beliefs on everyone else. What? Norn hopped to her feet. Aisha, you went too far, Rudeus spoke up. But I understand what Norn was saying too. If Sylphie had said the same thing herself, it would have been understandable. I'm equally at fault for not considering how everyone would feel. We can't blame Norn. Well, I guess, if you say so, Aisha replied. Norn looked conflicted before she stood up to go march off. However, she stopped, looking back at Rudeus. Big brother, what is it? Would you teach me swordsmanship when you have time? He was shocked by her request, assuming that she had more choice words. Was she wanting to use Paul's sword? While he felt half-baked attempts at self-defense would be self-destructive at best, but this world wasn't like his last. It might do her good to learn swordsmanship. Even a little power was better than none. The bigger problem was if he would be a good teacher. Are you sure you want me to teach you? I can't approve of what you've done, but I don't hate you either. Okay, that wasn't what he was asking, but at least you got the confirmation there. But he couldn't turn her down after she indirectly admitted she still liked him. All right, I'll make time to teach you after school or something. Please do. She then left the room. In the end, he was helpless. Sylphie had to rescue him with her generosity. Big brother, you look pathetic right now, you know, Aisha said. He nodded, unable to say anything in his defense. After that, Rudeus, Sylphie, and Roxy began to talk about how things would work going forward. Order in which they would spend nights together, negotiating quality time. Amidst it, Aisha took her leave. Well, Miss Roxy, I look forward to living together. Yes, me too. Aisha grumbled under her breath as she left. But she was smiling. Rudeus wondered what was up with her. Again, I should know that door just got crept open. She mad that Roxy beat her, but she know that door opened now. As her conversation continued, Rudeus realized most would be aghast that they were discussing this amidst Paul's passing. But that was precisely why he wanted a more cheerful topic. While Roxy offered Sylphie to be Rudeus' main priority, opting to accept any of his free time, Sylphie protested. She wanted it to be fair. Sylphie figured that eventually he would take in more wives, so she didn't want them to be bashful. Rudeus thought how little faith that she had in his lower half with those words. Roxy's issues was that she was still feeling overwhelmed with guilt. She wanted to stay on the sidelines until Sylphie had her baby. They came to an agreement that they would wait 1 month for the birth before officially taking Roxy as his wife. He was probably an awful person for finding it a disappointment to not have any lovemaking for an entire month, but thinking about having them both at the same time made his boy stand up. No matter how bad he wasn't going to cheat more than he had. He wanted Sylphie to trust that he wouldn't falter again. Last time was a unique situation, and because it was Roxy, as long as he didn't wind up in a depressive spiral and a woman of Roxy's caliber appeared before him, he wouldn't cheat again. Ever. That's when Sylphie spoke up. But you said Roxy is pregnant as well. In that case, if we wait a month, you won't be able to have sex with her either. What do we do then? About what Rudy said regarding that, I think he was lying. I didn't get the opportunity to say as much, but I'm actually not pregnant. Huh? Rudeus blurted out. What was Elinalise talking about before then? Oh, she baited him right into a trap. That jerk. Damn it. Dancing in the palm of her hands. What is it, Rudy? Roxy asked. Nothing. But let me just make it clear that I wasn't lying. It was just a misunderstanding on my part. Oh, all right then. She scratched her cheek, face red. But I look forward to it someday. Oh yeah, me too. The words happy family planning came to mind as he had a smile on his face. Rudy's a pervert, isn't he? Sylphie said. Yes, I certainly am, he agreed. I wonder what our pervy Rudy is going to do to me, Roxy wondered. And that was how he came to have a second wife. That night, Rudeus and Sylphie lay together. They gazed at each other quietly. Sylphie then spoke up. I had something absolutely tragic pictured in my mind when you said that you had something else to talk about, and you had Roxy standing beside you. What's that? I thought you might tell me that you couldn't love me anymore, and you wanted to leave me. I would never say that. He wondered what kind of sleazebag would say that. Yeah, I know. Sylphie wrestled around, and he could feel her caressing the stump of his missing hand. But I was still anxious. I don't know why. I just got the feeling that you weren't going to come back to me. A sense of foreboding, Rudeus thought. He could see that. It was a close call. It would be no surprise if he would have died. Did I worry you? Yes, she replied. It's okay now, he said. As he brushed her head, he noticed her long hair. She had grown it longer for him. She was waiting for him the whole time. But he did something stupid. The thought had him apologizing for breaking his promise. It's fine. I love you the way you are, Sylphie said. But if you'd done the same to me, I would have screamed and cried like a baby and lashed out at you for betraying me. I know I would, Rudeus replied. But I wouldn't do that to you, Sylphie said. I don't have eyes for anyone else but you, Rudy. She pecked him on the cheek as a wave of affection bubbled up inside of his chest. He would love her for the rest of his life. She must have been worried and wanted to wail at him. Still, she accepted everything without complaint. Then he felt something wriggle against his lower half. Come on, Sylphie. We can't do that. If you start touching me down there, I'm not going to be able to hold myself off. I mean, I am interested in pregnancy sex, but no, we can't, Rudy. It wouldn't be good for the baby. They looked down to find a mountainous lump. Folding back the blanket, they discovered Dillo. When did he get in here? Pervy little thing, sticking his head in people's crotches. Just like you, Rudy, Sylphie said. No, well, I guess you could sleep with us for the night. He made a bed for Dillo. It was like a dog. Eventually, they'd have to make a kennel. Or perhaps it could be housebroken like a dog. They then retired for the night. Sylphie, glad Rudeus was home. Really cool stuff, really cool stuff. A few days had passed, and the fear of another disaster striking gradually faded. The future seemed brighter than that, even if he had concerns about Zenith. She had claimed one of the larger bedrooms. Despite it being the one the previous residents were killed in, Zenith had taken a liking to it. Rudeus had also taken Zenith to a doctor. Renoa Kingdom's most prominent practitioners referred to him by Ariel. Unfortunately, he just threw up his hands, saying he had no idea what kind of issue she had. There was just no technology in this world for it. It was probably because of healing magic that medical treatment in this world was so unbalanced. Regardless, they drew up plans for rehabilitation, specifically ones formulated for someone with amnesia. While uncertain it would work, it was better than doing nothing. He also had plans to search for a magical implement that could help recover memories. Not that he knew if one existed. It would probably be a long-term endeavor, and he wasn't sure what her family would say about the situation. Sylphie was progressing in its schedule. Pregnancy brought about changes to the body, and he had joy in knowing he brought about that change in the size of her chest. That was probably what people meant when they talked about a sense of domination. Ah, Sylphie, all mine, he thought. Having no left hand sucked. Half the satisfaction. But with her chest producing milk soon, he wondered if he could have a taste. He suspected she would be cross with him if he asked. Maybe even scorn him. But it might be worth asking, even if the odds were against him. You sure do love breasts, Sylphie said. Yeah, I do. They're tiny, but the best in the world. Best in the world? Can you really say that after you grow up Roxy's? Forgive me for my sins. I'm not angry. They engaged in playful banter. Their relationship as strong as ever. In his previous world, this incident would have probably strained their relationship. But in this world, Sylphie was understanding. As long as he loved them equally, he could have 2 or 3 wives. Roxy took up one of the smaller rooms in the second floor. He wanted her to have a more spacious one, but apparently she liked cramped spaces, which he understood. He didn't mind them either. I kind of wonder if that's like trauma from the whole thing of the teleportation labyrinth that she was stuck in that really small room for the longest time. There's a couple parts in here that I'm going to skip because I think they'll probably cover it in the next season, so I'm going to dance around some stuff in here. Another month passed and Sylphie gave birth. It was a normal delivery, no complications. Only issue was that the blizzard made the doctor unable to arrive on time. Thankfully, they had Lilia. She was experienced in it and had Aisha for assistance, walking her through everything. Rudeus and Roxy were on standby for healing, but Rudeus' nerves were shot. All he could do was grip Sylphie's hand as it contorted in pain. Lilia said it brought back memories of when Zenith gave birth to Norn. This gave Rudeus flashbacks. Norn being a breech baby, both in danger. Paul was useless and completely choked up, but Rudeus kept his cool and assisted back then. Lilia consoled him that Sylphie would be fine, briskly working and handling everything with such practiced expertise, but he couldn't calm his nerves. He clinged to her hand and wiped away the sweat from her brow. Sylphie giggled, despite in pain, telling him to relax. Even Aisha snorted, earning a smack from Lilia. As things began, Rudeus wondered what he could do, but he couldn't do anything. Soon after, the baby was born. She let out a cry as she was delivered safely in the world. A little girl, adorable one, with the same color as Rudeus. Lilia lifted her up and handed her to Sylphie. Holding her tight, she sighed relief. I'm so glad. Her hair's not green. Rudeus mussed Sylphie's hair. Hair that had once been green, but was now a beautiful white. Yeah, he replied. Even if the baby had green hair, he wouldn't have blamed Sylphie. How could he? Green was his favorite color in this world. The color of Sylphie and Reserve's hair. Even Roxy, in the right light, would shine emerald. He loved green. If someone wanted to discriminate against green hair, they would have to go through him. He'd face them, even if it made him an enemy of the whole world. Green was an ill omen of this world. He thanked God for their good fortune that his child had his hair color. Speaking of God, she was in the next room, pale as a sheet, gripping her staff. Yeah, when I seen Roxy in the room right there, I was like, yeah, once everything was done, she went in the other room. Reed took the child into his hands. She was warm, voice fierce as she cried. She was tiny, overflowing with life. His heart flooded with emotion, and he thought about how this girl was his baby that Sylphie had given birth to. Tears sprung up. Paul was gone, but now they had a baby. Paul had saved his life. If it hadn't been for him, Rudeus wouldn't be holding his child now. However, in exchange, Paul would never again hold his own wife, his own daughters, or his grandchild. Would he be bitter that he couldn't be here, or laugh or boast that it was all thanks to him? Either way, Rudeus had to keep on living. For his child's sake, he couldn't die. He had to protect Sylphie, his family. Sylphie took the first two letters of the name and altered it to come up with Lucy Greyrat. Aisha laughed, calling it a cheap name, and Lilia smacked her over the head again. Rudeus was just happy that she was a girl. If it had been a boy, he might have called him Paul. Lilia chased Rudeus out, apparently having much to be done. In the living room, he planted himself on the sofa, Roxy settling beside him. Looking weary herself, probably mental fatigue. That was the first time I ever watched a birth. It was amazing, Roxy said. I've seen it a couple times now, Rudeus replied. About 3, I guess. But it wears you out even more, knowing it's your own. Knowing Sylphie was even more drained. He'd have to show his appreciation to her later. I guess that must be how I was born too, Roxy said. Well, isn't that how everyone's born? He didn't know much about Midgard reproduction, but assumed it was like humans. They couldn't be much different, right? Like he's thinking, oh man, she's gonna puke it out. I'll be giving birth like that too eventually, won't I? Roxy's face was red. He slipped off his shoes and folded his legs underneath himself on the couch. Yes, I hope I can ask you to do that for me. Was Sylphie giving birth? It meant that he'd start the baby-making process with Roxy. He was looking forward to it, even if Sylphie had just delivered. He was really hopeless. Not that he hated himself for it. He couldn't. Not when Paul had probably felt the same in the past. He couldn't wait, he thought with a laugh, as Roxy flushed a bright shade, wrapping her arms around her body. Rudy, you got a seriously dirty look on your face. I was born with it, he replied. Probably something that he had before then. Before he started his routine, he needed to announce the birth. The following day, he went alone to the outskirts of the city, where a graveyard for nobles was nestled on a low hill. This is where he put Paul to rest. He may have fussed over being lumped alongside a bunch of nobles, but this place had good management. He stood amidst the snow before a Renoa-style round grave marker. He didn't know if Paul was religious. He seemed the type not worry about that, so he was sure he'd be forgiven if they made a mistake in that regard. Perhaps it would have been more ideal to make a grave in Osra, where Buena Village once was. Paul had no connection to this land, but burying him so far away would make him unable to visit. Rudeus had already informed Geese and the others of the location. They even visited as a group. Each person brought something they thought Paul would like. Alcohol, a short sword, that kind of thing. Geese and Talhand sat before the grave and drank themselves silly, before earning the gravekeeper's ire. Rudeus set out to clean the grave. A bottle that he had purchased crooked under his arm. He dusted off the snow, shining it with a cloth. After setting the bottle in front of the grave, Rudeus placed his hand together. Unfortunately, he couldn't get any flowers, as there weren't any for sale. Not that Paul was one for flowers. Paul, father, my baby was born yesterday. A little girl. She's Sylphie's, so I'm sure she'll grow up beautiful. I wish you could have seen her. If Paul had seen her, I'm sure he would have fussed and cooed until Zenith scolded him. He probably would have taken Rudeus to celebrate, both drinking to a stupor. Then Paul would have made a move on Lilia, making Zenith exasperated. It was so in character. He could picture it clearly. The future that would have been if he was still alive and his mother hadn't lost her memories. I've made Roxy my wife. I have 2 now, just like you did. I wish you would have taught me how to mentally prepare myself for it. He technically did with the 2 swords comment in the anime. Now that he thought about it, maybe that was what Paul wanted to talk to him about back at the labyrinth. He knew Roxy had feelings for Rudeus, and Rudeus had feelings for her. He probably wanted to teach him how to prepare for that. It's not quite the same. I don't suddenly have 2 daughters, but eventually Roxy will get pregnant and have my child as well. I'm sure that's still far in the future, but I hope they'll grow to be as healthy as Norn and Aisha. Rudeus had no intentions of knocking Lilia's teachings, but he wanted his children to grow as equals. strong enough to withstand when people call them half-demons. Apparently Sylphie thinks I want to take another wife. I don't plan anything of the sort. But they do say that what happens once will happen a third time. Maybe she's right. Rudeus wondered if Paul considered marrying Ghislaine, Elinalise, or Vierra. It seemed he had a sexual relationship with Ghislaine, so Rudeus suspected that he considered it at least once. Then again, Paul was a bit more open-minded than he was, so perhaps he didn't think as far as marriage. Maybe I shouldn't be overthinking this, huh? When Rudeus directed that question at the gravestone, Rudeus felt as if he could see Paul grinning mischievously back at him. All Rudeus could do was see Paul's smile. He couldn't hear any words. But it wasn't as if Paul had ever thought things through. Rudeus was sure that he racked his brains for years about things. It only made sense. There was a few people in this world who lived without thinking at all. Father, I was a terrible son. Carrying memories of my previous life. I didn't love you like I should have, as my father. Rudeus took to his feet, gulping the bottle once. It was strong, burning like fire on the way down. Once he was done, he splashed it over the grave. But now I do see myself as your son. Maybe alcohol wasn't the best for someone like Paul, who'd screwed up by drowning himself in it. But surely today could be exception. They were celebrating a new life in the world. Finally understand now. I'm still just a kid, a brat who pretended to be an adult by using his previous memories. Rudeus then took another swig and poured some for Paul, again, until it was empty. Now that I have a child in this world, and I'm a parent, I know I have to grow up right away. And in order to do that, I'll have to make a bunch of mistakes, grieve over them, and change slowly, gradually. I'm sure that's how you had to do it too. So I'll do my best I can. Popping the lid over the bottle, Rudeus sat down in front of the grave. I'll come back again. Next time, I'll bring everyone else along too. Many things had fallen into place, with a great deal of pain and joy along the way. He'd repeated horrible mistakes, but it wasn't over. No matter how much he screwed up or got things wrong, it wasn't the end. He still had a lot of life to live in this world, and that's how he was going to do it. Live to the fullest. So no matter when he died, he'd have no regrets. And that's the end of volume 12, technically. There's obviously some skipped chapters in there, mainly focused around some cameos at the end of the anime episode. Like I said before, one of those I wish I didn't see because I don't even know that yet. But yeah, obviously the big one for a lot of people is Eris. She looking a little bit taller. I know there's been some like discussion even on our Discord about how she looks young, and I'm like, yeah, technically if you look at where her knees are at and you look at the size of her blade that they got from Megurdian Village, yeah, she technically got a little bit bigger, but yeah, that's it. That's the finale. I hope you guys enjoyed the skip content video and running through it, and enjoyed watching me bawl my eyes out once again for the 15th time. If you've been watching my novel analysis, I lost it with this particular set of chapters, but it's good stuff. It's really good stuff. I definitely do think this final episode was probably up there as one of my favorite episodes of the anime adaptation so far. They covered all the great stuff. They did a great job of it. Again, Seiyu's absolutely nailed it, especially Norn Seiyu. Oh my gosh, was too good. And again, looking forward to season 3. I hope they'll take their time, because obviously, as for people that know the source material, it's going to take some really quality work there. And I really do hope they nail a lot of those scenes and make it a massive spectacle. It's going to be amazing, but they have their work cut out for them. I think this next season is going to be the big one. So I hope they get at least another 2 years to work on it, which I would hope to have it as soon as possible, but I don't want them to rush it. So I hope they take their time. But until then, I hope you guys will stick around. All those that are checking out weekly for the skip content video, hope you guys will stick around. I may do some more skip content videos for the first half or the first season, which I'm still finishing up. Like, I really want to do one for Magic of the World, which they've pretty much skipped everything about Magic. Some other ones I want to do as well, so hopefully you guys will stick around for that. But I appreciate you guys dropping by weekly. It's been a massive success, just like the first part. Really do appreciate you guys' support. I'm glad that you guys enjoy this content and the work that's put into it every single week. But until the next time, unless you check out my Mushoku Mondays, until the next time, y'all take care.